situation very clearly and created a kind of momentum where Japan felt it was inevitable to go to war. The reason for that probably was they did not want a competitor to their old colonial empires in Asia. You had the Dutch, you had the French, you had the British, you had these competing colonial empires in Russia. They did not want a competitor from Asia, and therefore they wanted to, in a sense, squeeze Japan into a box and keep it, in a sense, as much of a box as possible, with the result that you had the embargo on oil, you had various other blockades, you had various other pressures on Japan, and all these pressures multiplied and created a pressure cooker kind of reaction in which the military and the, if I may say so, the hawk faction in Japan came to the top. It mastered, it took over policy, and it led to war. Now, this is the point is that a similar policy actually is being pursued, has been pursued vis-a-vis Russia, in the sense that in the part of the Soviet Union, it was a very, very clear system of containment. You blockade them from foreign trade, you blockade them from technology, you blockade them from traveling far and wide. The Russian was not encouraged to travel, visas were not given. It's very different from the treatment of China, where you've got no blockade on foreign trade, no blockade on travel. But China, it is not containment, it is constrainment. You are trying to constrain China militarily and diplomatically without containing. In the case of Russia, it was full-scale containment. Now, post-1992, after the fall of the Soviet Union and the creation of Russia as a state, what happened? This was an opportunity to integrate Russia into the Western global architecture, because Russia was very ready to enter the global Western architecture. But unfortunately, what happened was, it was taken as an opportunity to try and degrade Russian technological and scientific capacities, and to make sure Russia will never again be a challenge to the United States and to Europe. So from 92 onwards, for the entire period of the Clinton administration, that is up to the year 2000, 2001, the effort has been to degrade Russian capacities, to stop Russian science from developing, and to create a lot of obstacles in the technological development of Russia. So this created a backlash in Russia. This created a feeling that they will not accept Russia as an equal power, which is a fact. They would not accept Russia as an equal power. And this created a certain amount of anger and tensions inside Russia, which discredited those who believed that Russia's future was with Europe. When Mr. Putin came to office, Mr. Putin initially also tried to follow the European line. You must remember, Putin is from St. Petersburg. Now, St. Petersburg is a quintessentially European city. It's a Russian city that can pass off as a European city. I mean, there's nothing, it's more European than Russian, if you ask me. And Putin came from that zone. He tried very hard to go into Europe, but the reality was he discovered in the first 4 or 5 years that the Europeans were not ready to cut a square deal with him, and they were not ready to give him the kind of prestige, the kind of privilege, the kind of access that Russia felt it deserved as a major global power. So Putin has therefore turned into the fallback position. Today, Russia is in a sense opposing NATO, opposing the West, siding with China. But the reality is it's a fallback position. It is not a natural policy of Russia. It's a reaction to what they perceive is Western humiliation of Russia. The natural reaction of Russia and Russian scholars and Russian academics would be a full integration into Europe. In fact, even though they may not talk about it, write about it, I think their most fond hope would be a full integration into the Western alliance. Now, this is never going to happen. For one reason is France and Germany. Second reason is technological. The reality of the situation is that obviously United States, Europe, etc. will not want to create a technological competitor to itself. Neither France, nor Germany, nor Italy, or US would want to create that kind of technological competitor. Unfortunately for them, a competitor has emerged in Asia. They never, in the 1990s, Clinton and his group would never have believed that a technological competitor can evolve in Asia. You had Japan, but Japan was very firmly anchored in the Western alliance. But now you've got China coming as a major technological competitor of these people. They wanted to block Russia from that kind of thing. And this has been an extremely damaging policy from the point of view of Russia, NATO, Russia-US relations. This fundamental distrust in Russia of the West has its origins in the Clinton period and the Clinton effort to degrade the capacities of Russia to the extent possible. Now, as I said, it's not a very pretty picture. Now, in the long term, what is the likelihood? Will Russia lean more towards China? In my view, it will. In my view, it certainly will. And now, will China be leaning, in a sense, a kind of a counter to the West? Now, you have a lot of people who thought that you can have a condominium, you can have a G2, you can have China aligned with the West. I mean, Mr. Jiang Zemin, for example, I think had a vision in which China, United States, Europe, three large blocks would function peaceably together, divide the universe between them, and run itself very, very well. I think Mr. Jiang had a very clear worldview, which was based a very westernized, West-centric worldview. You know, unfortunately, I do not think that is a realistic worldview. The reality is that the European countries and the United States, which is the head of the Western Alliance, they are still suffering from the effects of about 400 years of successful European colonialism. I think for the next 20, 30, 40 years, they will still believe that they will be in a prime position. They will still believe that they can challenge other powers. So in that sense, they are not going to welcome any effort by China to have a kind of an equitable, a win-win kind of situation. They will look upon China as a zero-sum situation. By looking upon China as a zero-sum situation, they're going to create a zero-sum situation. With the result that what's going to happen is increasing competition between China and the Western world. Now, when Mr. Hu Jintao came to power, the difference between Hu Jintao and Jiang Zemin was Hu Jintao broadened China into a global kind of situation. Where Jiang Zemin focused on Europe and the United States, Hu Jintao focused on Africa, he focused on Latin America, he focused on Russia, he focused on the entire globe. In that, he immediately started challenging the West. That is point number one. Point number two, he started ramping up Chinese R&D and Chinese technology. Till Mr. Hu Jintao came to power, China was quite content to borrow foreign technology, to buy foreign technology. I mean, if you remember when we used to go to Beijing, I mean, even till about 2003, 2004, almost all technology was from abroad. Today you find a lot of technologies are produced in China. And a lot of world-class technologies are being produced in China, including by Huawei, by Lenovo, the various other systems. They are rapidly catching up. In my view, it's going to be a matter of 7 to 11 years before China can produce an aircraft which is better than Airbus.